So now, yeah. So out here we have made this sheet. Okay. Now, in case of a link, there will be there always will be uh, attribute known as href. Href attribute will always point towards the URL which will open when you click on the link. For example, on this website. Okay. On this website, suppose I investigate the link sign in. Fine. So the sign in link has an href attribute which points to this particular URL. Okay. And this is a mandatory attribute. It will always be found with the link. Okay. And this href attribute tells you the link which opens up when you click on the sign in link. Okay, the page, the link, the URL of the page which will open up, right? Similarly, you have the other uh, component known as text field. The text field has the tag name input. Okay, for example, in Quicker, this is a text field over here, right? If you investigate this text field, okay, out here you have various attributes associated with it. Various like ID is there, class is there, okay, but there will be one attribute known as type. This one, this is the mandatory attribute for every text field. Okay, for every text field, the value of this type attribute is equal to text. Okay, fine. This is the mandatory attribute. Rest all of attributes are optional. They might not be present or they might be present. Okay. Similarly, for a button on a page, for example, this search is a button, right? There will be many attributes like class is there, and similarly there will be many other attributes as well. Okay, but the attribute type equals to submit. Type equals to submit would represent a button. Fine. Okay. Now there can be a checkbox as well, right? For checkbox, from my experience, I know the type is checkbox. Okay. Satish is asking the question, how can we identify which is mandatory or look, that's why I asked you to go through the HTML tutorial once. These are predefined tags. The mandatory tags are predefined. Optional tags can be introduced by the developer and all everybody. Okay. So now in case of radio buttons, type is equal to radio. Fine. In case of text, there is no mandatory attribute. Okay. In case of drop list also there is no mandatory attribute. In case of an image, like this is an image over here, quicker.com is an image, right? You will always find the attribute source. Source attribute will point towards the URL from which this image is being loaded. Okay, so the source attribute is a mandatory attribute in case of an image, right? Okay, so now what about optional attributes? Okay, there are various type of optional attributes like ID, name and all. They can be present with any component. For example, a link can have ID, a link can have name. Okay, sometimes there is an attribute called class. Generally, these three attributes, okay, they are used with any of these components. Okay, ID, name or class or something. Okay, and these are given by the developer in CSS or something, right? So this is how the page is built up. Right now, suppose I have to um, identify this select box with Selenium. So I can tell Selenium that find the select box on the page which is having this particular ID. Okay, alright. So you can ask Selenium to identify a select tag with the ID category ID. And this is how you identify it. Right? Now how do you do that? This is fine. These are the various HTML components. Every component has a tag name. Every component has set of mandatory and optional attributes. Okay. In case of an image, there is a mandatory attribute called source. Okay. Now, how do I identify an element on the page? Okay. Now, to identify an element on the page, there are various ways. You can identify by name, ID, class, XPath, CSS locator, and there are various location strategies available. Fine. Now to identify the elements on a page, let's go to this code over here. I'm writing driver.get to this particular URL. Fine. Now I'll deviate a little bit from the topic, right? I'll deviate a little bit from the topic. When you write driver.get, you get loads of functions available with the Webdriver. Okay, and you really don't know what these functions they do. Some of these functions by name you might be able to identify, but some of the functions you might not be able to identify. Okay, so to be able to identify these functions, you should be going to Java docs, right? What I'll do is I'll go over here. And I'll go into Java docs. Alright. And in Java docs, you will see that there are various classes. Okay. I told you earlier that Webdriver is an interface. Okay. In this Java docs, whatever is written in italics, right? This is an interface. Okay. For example, mouse is an interface. Yesterday I talked about interfaces, right? I'm a little bit deviating from the topic. Hold on, it's a little necessary out here. And whatever is written in italics is actually an interface in the Java docs. This is the mouse interface. It's got these many functions, and these are the implementing classes. Similarly, I told you yesterday that Webdriver is an interface. Webdriver is also written in italics, right? Hold on. Okay, now in this Webdriver, these are the functions available, and in your Eclipse, when you write driver dot, you get the same functions over here. If I need to find out what a particular function is doing, you can go to Java docs and you can read about that function, what that function does, right? Now this is again a painstaking thing that again and again you need to go to Java docs to understand what the function is doing, right? So you can import the Java docs inside Eclipse. By importing Java docs inside Eclipse, you won't have to refer Java docs in your browser again and again for small things. Okay, so I'm going to import the documentation of Selenium, that is Java docs, into Eclipse. So to do so, hold on, I'll go back, and this is the Java doc link I used to click on, right? I'll right click on this link and I'll copy the link location. Okay, so I'm copying the link location from here, and I'll go to my day 3 project, go to the properties of the project, and under libraries, you have all the jars, right? In all these jars, search for the jar Selenium Java 2.5 or 2.25, whatever is the version they choose. Okay?
I'm sorry, actually, your screen is frozen.
Pardon?
Don't see your screen right now.
Yeah, you're
It's frozen.
in the same mouse page.
After you have expanded this jar file, you will get this option Java doc location. You edit this option and paste the URL out here. This is the online URL. You can delete index.html from the end. You should delete index.html. Okay. If you have Java docs on your local machine, you can select the second option. Right. If you're getting it online, you can select this one, click on OK, and click on OK again. So Java docs, that is the documentation of Selenium, is now imported. Now when you write driver dot, you get lot of functions, and when you click on the function, on the right side you will also get the definition of the function, that what the function is doing. For example, the get function over here, it will load the new web page. So at runtime only you can see what is done by which function. Suppose if I move my mouse over Firefox driver now, so I will get the information about Firefox driver, what it's supposed to do, and Webdriver as well. Webdriver is a interface. You will get everything. These are the implementing classes and everything you will get. So basically, importing the documentation helps you that you don't have to run here and there into the Java docs. Okay? But still, we will require to go into Java docs, but not so frequently. Okay? For minor issues, we can just refer the documentation which is there in Eclipse, which we imported. Right. Now, in Selenium, there is a function called as driver dot find element. Okay, driver dot find element. If you go inside this function, right, you will see that this function finds the first web element using the given method. Now, what is web element? Don't confuse this with web element of QTP. If you know QTP, web element of QTP is something different. In Selenium, everything is categorized as a web element. All these things which I have written over here, technically all these things in Selenium are known as web elements. Everything on a web page, button, link, text, whatever it is known as a web element in Selenium. Okay, so now if I write over here driver.find element, that means I want to find any component on the page. For example, on the Gmail page, I need to find this username field and I need to write something in it, right? So this Gmail field is a element, web element. Now if I look at this in Firebug, this is the field. Okay. Now when you write driver.find element, find element function accepts reference of by class in it. There is an internal class called by. This is the by class. When I click on that link, by class opens. By class tells you the various criteria by which you can find the elements. For example, by class name, CSS selector, by ID, link text, name, partial link text, tag name, XPath. Hold on, I'll just show you in Eclipse. When you write over here, driver.find element in by, you can write by dot. You will get all these options: class name, CSS selector, ID, link text, name, partial link text, tag name, XPath. So you get all these options. So if you write over here by the ID, okay, and you give the ID of the email field, the developer has given the ID to this field. If you give the ID email, it will find the element on the page by the ID email. Fine. And what the find element function does is it returns you the reference of web element. Okay, it returns the object of web element class. If you look at this web element, hold on. In your Java docs, if you scroll down, you can see this interface web element. This interface web element has got various functions in it, which can be performed on any element of a page. For example, click, get attribute, get location, get size, get tag name, get text, is the element displayed, is it enabled, is it selected, right? Submit the element. Send keys, that means type. Basically send keys is it simulates typing into the element. Okay, so these are the general functions which we can perform on a web component on the page or a web element on a page, and these are defined inside an interface web element. When I write driver.findElement, it returns me the object reference of web element, and I'll call my web element as username. Okay, you import the class web element. Okay, now if I have to type something in the username field, okay, if I write web element username dot, I will get all those functions which are there in the web element interface which I just showed you. Okay, all these functions will be available in this list, and one of the functions which I just told you is send keys. Use this method to simulate typing into an element which may set its value. So username dot send keys, I write hello out here. Okay, if I run this code, this will go simply on you see that it has gone to gmail.com and it has written hello in the input field. Okay, similarly I can work with say web element password equals to driver dot find element by the, if you look at the password field of Gmail, then this is the ID of password field. Okay, you can write over here by the ID password. So I am using the optional attribute ID available out here to write something in the password field, and you can write like this: password dot send keys some password. Okay, fine. And similarly I can extract the web button, and I can, instead of send keys, I can click on that button, right? But out here, look, the thing is, if you run this, it will open in Firefox, it will go successfully to Gmail, it will type and everything, but if you observe carefully, the Firefox which is opened out here is very different from the Firefox which opens up regularly. For example, if I open up regular Firefox manually, if I open a Firefox, you will see that the open Firefox is having some bookmarks which you did, right? It is having Firebug inside it which you just installed. Okay, but the Firefox which is opened by Selenium is kind of blank one. It's got no bookmarks, it's not got any Firebug inside it. So what I mean to say is that there is a potential difference between the kind of Firefox which is opened by Selenium and which opens by default. This is because Selenium creates its own Firefox profile before opening Firefox. I'll talk about Firefox profile by tomorrow. I'll not talk about it today. Fine. But just note this fact that the Firefox which is opened by Selenium is different than the regular Firefox which is installed on your machine. Similarly, if I want to run this code on Chrome, instead of Firefox, if I want to run it on Chrome, then I'll have to write Webdriver driver equals to new Chrome driver, right? And the way I set up the path yesterday for Chrome driver, I'll have to set the system path out here as well, and in my project I will copy paste Chrome driver folder as well. You can simply copy paste in this your stuff in the project. You can right click in this day 2 project, copy the folder from here, right click on day 3, you can paste it over here. It will come up. You see that? Now if I run this will open Gmail and Chrome, and look, in Chrome also Selenium works perfectly fine. After all, these Google guys, they are behind Selenium tool, so they make sure that everything works in their browser Chrome as well. Right, hold on. So it goes there and it types everything. Similarly in I also, this will work. You'll have to just set the path of I. So you just have to make the code once. Just have to change the browser over here and the same code will execute on a different browser. It's not like that for different browsers you have to make different kind of code. No. Okay, because all the browser classes are implementing the WebDriver interface, and the WebDriver interface is having all these functions inside it. Inside it. Fine. Right. Now what I'll do is, guys, I'll end it up